Who is the devil? In the previous video, we saw that the word devil is the word live backwards, right? And we saw that the word evil is the word live. So live is to do evil. To live is to do evil. And then once you die, once you have lived, you become the devil. That's why when we speak to the dead, it is called divination. Which is seen as evil. But we know now what evil is. And evil also looks like the mother of all creation, Eve. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Let's see what we got. Okay. Oh, my name looking crazy. Okay. If you can't see this, what I'm writing is the evening and the morning. Let me move this close. Let's see. Okay. The evening and the morning were the first day. This is a verse in Genesis. The evening and the morning were the first day. The day begins at night. We look at the day as beginning when the sun comes up. But no. The day begins when the sun sets. The day was born out of darkness. And we can read that in Genesis. Let me get to one of my Bibles. I'm going to get more organized later. Maybe. Okay. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So, first thing God said was, "Let there be light." In order for light to shine, there first must be darkness. Just like this chalkboard is black. So if I can write on it with white, you can see it. This is an example of a polarity. You got light, you got dark. Okay? And also, I'm going to go back up to the beginning of this book. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So God created heaven and earth. That's another example of a polarity. You got heaven, earth. Okay. And the earth was without form and void. So, based on this, if God had to create the heaven and the earth, God didn't have a place to live. We always say God is in heaven, but God had to create the heaven and the earth. Let's read it again. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So God, whoever God is, had to create both of these, okay? And let's not even say that, this is a dominion. Maybe God never said that God lives in heaven. If God had to create the heaven and the earth. So in the beginning, God has no place to live, okay? That's what that says. And the earth was without form and void. Okay? Let's see. Now this Bible gives me other translations of what that verse means. The Septuagint says, "And the earth was invisible and unfurnished." Another version says, "A formless wasteland." Another version says, "chaotic." So, it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Okay. God created the heaven and the earth. If that is so, then God made the earth void and without form. Okay? Or God walked up to the earth. The earth was already there and God added to it. So either God created the earth and made it first without form and void, or God approached the earth from wherever God was. You see what I'm saying? If he had to create the heaven and the earth, both of these have to be created. Both of these do not exist. Only God exists right now. Okay? If only God exists. Matter of fact, I'm going to draw it like a picture. You know who I am. Okay. So, we got God. We're going to call God I am. Okay? So, let's make a little stick body of God. This is God. Okay? That's God. Now, God, what, is floating? Floating in space. Alright? God is floating in space, or wherever God is. And the earth was without form and void. Okay, so God, first it says God has to create the heaven and the earth. Okay. Then it says, and the earth was without form and void. So that's something that has to be addressed. Did God, so let's just say we're going to draw some stars. Okay, yeah. Let's just say, and then the moon, put the sun up there. Okay, that's going to be heaven. We're going to put the earth over here. What we're going to put in the center of Mother Earth? Africa. Well, really, that's all that matters. Okay. I don't really know what the earth looks like. I know there's some stuff up there and all the little stuff around there. Okay. Okay. This the earth. This is heaven. So I am, who is God. This is God. Got to create both of these, okay? Then it says, and the earth was without form and void. Now, either, like we said, either God had to create this earth, like it wasn't here, and God had to make it, or God only added to it. Okay? Let's just see. Let's see what happens. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. Darkness upon the face of the deep. And this deep probably means, okay, it says abyss. The darkness was on the face of the roaring deep. It would probably mean water. Okay. So, God has to create the heaven and the earth. Darkness is upon the face of the deep. So then, the heaven don't even got stars in it right now. Because it's dark. Okay? And the earth is without form. So do that mean? Never mind. I must say that. Okay. So heaven is over here, but it has no lights in it yet. Okay? This is the very beginning of creation as told by Genesis. And it says, darkness was upon the face of the deep. The deep would be water. So there's water little fish in the water. Okay, we know that's water. Wow, it's been a long time since I drew a fish. We're going to make it a shark. Okay. Little fish ain't going to be lobster. Do sharks travel together? I don't know. Next. So, we know there's water. And then it says, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So, not God himself or herself, but the Spirit of God. In another translation, it says the wind of God, a wind from God. Another translation says a tempestuous wind. The breath of God. And the Spirit of God. Okay. So spirit here would be another word for breath. So, this is God. God, from God's self, sent the Spirit to move over the water. And God said, let there be light. So that means everything was born from the water. Let's read it again. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void. See, really this stuff is backwards in here. So, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. So the water came before the sun. And that makes sense. But the darkness was there with the water, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So there was no light. There was only darkness and water. Just like a child in the womb. That would be the beginning of that child's creation. As that child forms in the womb, in that darkness and in water, that child's mind has to create himself or herself in order to become a God. And once we break through the matrix, which every human must do, then we enter the God realm. This is God realm. The reason we're taught so heavily that we will die and go to heaven is to remove us from now. Because as we live is the way we die. So what we work for here is what we set up in the next world. If we make heaven here, we'll have heaven there. Do you know what I mean? When we work for something, that's when we can reap it. So, and the same thing is in here, because if these things had to be created first, and they did, we just need to know what created it. We need to know who created it. And what was it created with? So from darkness, let me write in cursive, but I'll speak it. From darkness plus water plus the Spirit of God. And then the voice of God. And then all that equal the light. Okay. So there was darkness and water, and the Spirit of God moved on the water through the darkness. And then the voice of God spoke and created the light of God. Or the Son of God. Which is Lucifer. Which is Lucifer. This is talking about conception and how children are created. And what happens when a seed is planted, or everything is created after itself. Everything is made after itself. So if God made us, then we are God. If you are made after something, it's just like Bobby Hemmett, he said, if I take some water and pour it into a glass, that water is still, it comes from that same fountain. All of the water is connected. All water is connected. All water is connected. And there's more water than there is land. So really, the Spirit of God would be, they say, is the Ruach. Water is the only thing that can become a solid liquid. Not the only thing, but it's more water than anything on this earth. Okay, more water than anything, which means we're made up of mostly water. So water can become a solid liquid and a spirit, or evaporate. And it's not the only element that can do it, but it's the one that's most plenteous, and it's the one we need the most. And we're a water people. And so that brings me to these words, which I've been looking up. So you know, Marine. Marine spirit. These are water spirits.